Alright guys, so welcome back to the beautiful world of Cinema 4D, and in this video we're going to be creating this amazing tree. So yeah, without any further ado, let's actually go ahead and start. Alright, so our first task would be to get the 3D model of the tree. And where did I get the 3D model? I used an extension called Forester. So I have this extension installed in Cinema 4D, and we can generate trees, 3D models of trees and all kinds of like nature stuff from this plugin. And the problem with this is that it's paid, it's not free, right? But if you don't have this plugin, you can just go onto these websites. You can go to this website, Lobwork, and you can get 3D models of trees and nature and stuff like that. And you can even go to this WizPark website and you can download 3D models from here as well. Or you can go to the trusty old Quixel Megascans. And I've used a ton of these models, so yeah, these models are pretty good, and they have all these what do you call them, this grass and nature stuff. So yeah, this website is pretty good, and I would personally recommend this website, and it's free too, so yeah, you have nothing to lose. Apart from that, if you don't want to use these websites, you can go to Google and just search say 3D models of tree, and you can search, and you can just type in free if you want. And you can go to these websites and you can just download whichever models you like, and you can see these, all of them are pretty good models. So yeah, alright, so I already have the extension, the plugin, so I'm going to use that. And so for that, I'm going to go to the plugins, Forester and Forester Tree. Now you can generate rocks, you can generate trees, and you can generate flowers. And this is obviously the cloner for scattering the flowers and stuff like that. So I'm going to select Forester Tree, and here you can see that we have this basic default tree. So now I'm gonna go to the tree library, and I'm just going to expand this. So you can see I have all these options, and from this I would like to choose this one, Acer, because this honestly is my personal favorite tree. And the thing with this is that these are pretty easy to render to, which means they don't have that many polygons, so they render really fast. And if I go to display and go around shading lines, you can see all of them have very less polygons, but this is not visible from far away, right? So the individual polygons are not visible from far away, so these look really good and they render very fast too. So next up, what I'm going to do is I have this model ready. So the materials here, the material which I'm using, this leaf material and this trunk material, these materials are regular Cinema 4D materials, and I'm going to convert these into Octane materials. So how am I going to do that? I am going to select both of these, and I'm going to go to plugins, C4D Octane. Just a second, don't click it. Hover over C4D Octane and then click convert materials, and it's going to create two new materials which are going to be Octane materials. So now we can go to function. Just give it a second. Okay, so we're done generating the materials, and now I'm going to go to function, and I'm going to select remove unused materials, right? So the unused materials will be removed. And now to make these leaves look more realistic, actually first let's just go ahead and fire up Octane renderer so you can see the before and after. So I'm just going to open this, I'm going to start rendering, and then I'm just going to dock it right here. So you can see this is the tree. So it's looking pretty good, but because of the lighting, it's not looking realistic. And to actually let's just go ahead and add a daylight, Octane daylight. So we can move this, we can rotate this. That angle seems to be good. And let's actually go ahead and add a plane as well. I'm just going to increase the size, and you can see this tree is looking pretty good already, but we will be making some tweaks to make it look even better. So first of all, I'm going to go to the leaf material. I'm going to go to the node editor, because I don't really use these. You should use the node editor because that is just better, and that's what makes Octane stand out from other render engines. So we're going to take this image texture, and we're going to right now we've already linked it to diffuse, so we've only linked it to diffuse. and we're going to be linking it to transmission as well. Now what that's going to do is, let me just show you first. So you can see this, just going to link it, transmission, and you can see it's a bit brighter. Now why is it brighter? The reason for it being brighter is that, just a second, is because the light can pass through these leaves and hit other leaves as well, so the shadows are less intense, which is making it look brighter, obviously. So next up, what we're going to be doing is we're going to go to this direct lighting and we're going to change it to path tracing. You can see this insane difference and looks much better because more light is able to bounce, and path tracing is going to take a little more time to render, but I guess it's worth it because it makes your renders look much more realistic. So next up, we can go ahead and delete this Octane daylight because we're not going to use that, and we can actually, let's just leave the plane for now. So next up, what we can do is we're going to be doing is we're going to be tweaking this branch material. Okay, because right now it looks kind of flat. If you look at it from this window, it looks pretty flat, right? So we're going to add some bumps and some displacement, not displacement, some normal and bumped maps, so it's going to look much better. So for the bump map, actually let's go to Google. We're going to search tree branch bump map. So you can see we have these bump maps and they're available for free. So let's just go ahead and download them. Let's just download them to desktop for now. So I have this downloaded, and I'm going to go back to the material editor. I'm going to go to the bump channel, and I'm going to drop it inside this bump. And even if you don't have Octane, the process should be pretty straightforward and similar, because you just have to drop these textures inside your specific channels. And actually, let me just go ahead and show you how we would do this in a normal material, a non-Octane material. So we have these textures, just turn on this bump. And yeah, if you're not using Octane, one thing I would definitely recommend you to do, that is to go to these settings, the render settings, by clicking this. And after that, you have to go down here, and in the effect, you have to turn this ambient occlusion on and turn this global illumination on. Now what these things are is, well, in Octane these are turned on by default, right? So you don't have to turn these on, but in your standard or your physical render, what happens is that your ambient occlusion makes your renders look more realistic by adding shading. So for example, if you take your finger and you bring it close to your second finger, you'll notice that there's a very subtle but dark shadow area between the two fingers, right? So that is called your ambient occlusion. And let me actually just go on Google and show you an example. So you can see this thing right here. In this, the ambient occlusion is turned off, and in this, the ambient occlusion is turned on. So you can see it makes a huge difference. And you can see in these, there's no shading, or there's no dark shadow area between these. But in this, there is a ton of like dark area and stuff. So ambient occlusion is a must, and it should always be on in all of your renders. And the other thing, global illumination, what it allows is that basically it allows light to be bounced off by your objects in your 3D scene and to be scattered throughout the scene. So I'm just going to do the same and show you an example of global illumination. You can see the difference between it being on and it being off is that here it's off and here it's on, right? So the difference is pretty good, because the thing is that the light is coming from here and it's just hitting these objects, and it's just hitting these objects and it's going back, right? So it's hitting these objects and it's going back, and it's being calculated like that. But in here, what happens is the lights are bounced off from your objects and they're scattered across the scene. So what happens is the light comes from here, it bounces here, bounces from here to here, and here to here, and here to here, and basically it just bounces and reflects throughout the scene. And that's how light behaves in real life, because there are infinite light. There are like millions and billions of light rays in your actual life, and in when your global illumination is turned off, there's only one or two light rays, and when global illumination is turned on, you can actually set the number of light rays. So yeah, that is a very important setting too, and that makes a huge difference in your renders. So yeah, that's pretty much it for your global illumination and your ambient occlusion. So if you're in physical or standard render, you just have to turn this on, right? So if you're not using Octane, then you'll just go to this bump texture, you'll just turn it on, and then you will just grab this texture and you will drag it on here, right here, as we did previously. So you can see these bumps. I'm just going to increase the size of this. Actually, it's not increasing, so never mind. So you can see these bumps and textures in this material. So that is what your bump map is doing. And your normal map, we're gonna go ahead and add a normal map too. So I'm just gonna search tree branch. Just give me a sec. Tree branch normal map. What am I doing? Wow. Alright, okay, so tree normal map, we're just gonna select any. This one looks good. I hope it's free. Yes, it is free. Alright, and you need to make sure that you're not actually stealing textures and stuff like that. You're using the ones which are free, or I mean obviously if you pay for them, that is paid textures are always going to be better. So you can just drag this, and let's drag it onto our standard render material first. So you can see it adds more of these bumps and texture. Actually, it doesn't do anything right now because we have to turn this on, and you can see these extreme bumps and like ununiformness or like ununiformity and stuff like that. So it makes your textures look, it makes your materials look extremely realistic. So now let's go ahead and add this to our trunk as well, our actual Octane trunk as well. So let's drag this material. Let's place it right here. So you might not actually be noticing a difference right here, but what's happening is that it is actually making a huge difference in your actual scene. So just a second, let me just actually go ahead and grab a displacement map too. Because what displacement does is that displacement is the most realistic of them all. And let's actually try this one. I think it will be a little too extreme, but let's try anyway. So let's go to our displacement. Let's add displacement first, and then just click this texture, and here we can add your texture, right? So we're just going to drag this in, and you can see, well, you can't see anything right now. I'm just going to give it a second to generate the whole displacement thing. So as you can see right now, it's an absolute mess because the height, the amount actually is pretty high. So I'm just going to set it to 1 centimeter. Now you can see it's a little more subtle, but I'm just going to set it to say 0.3 centimeters because I really want the effect to be extremely subtle. And you can see now it's looking pretty realistic, and you can see this branch is looking much better than it was previously. So next up, what we can do is we can focus on lighting now. Okay, so lighting, in lighting what we can do is that we can add an Octane area light. Now what is an Octane area light? If you're not familiar with that, you just go to objects and you select Octane area light. Now this will give you a basically, if you're familiar with Cinema 4D lights, you have this area light, and it's basically the same as your area light. So it's basically this rectangle which you can adjust, and it will basically light your scene. So I'm just gonna move it here and rotate it. So unlike actual Cinema 4D lights, these are not omnidirectional. So you can see this the side, only one side will be luminous and the other side will be black. So as you can see, So our lighting is pretty good right now. Let me just increase the size a little bit, because I really want this light to be as stabilized as I can. So now you can see we have this whole bright atmosphere and your whole bright surroundings. So what we can do is we can go to objects, HDRI environment, and this will add an HDRI environment, and as you can see, it made it even worse. It made it even more bright. We can select this Octane sky, we can select the environment tag on this, and we can come down, and here you will see all these settings. So this power is just going to bring it all the way down, and you can see only our this light is lighting the whole scene and nothing else is interfering. So now if I zoom in, actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of this plane because it's making it look bad. And now we can work with our lighting. So I will, just a second, let me just make this bigger. Actually, let me just take this out, undock. Let me just undock this because we don't really need that view for now. We can increase the size. You can see this. Alright, so right now it looks a little too bright, so I'm just going to select Octane Light. Actually, I'm just going to select this Octane Light tag, and I'm going to reduce the power. Something like that seems to be good. And now we're going to change the temperature or the color of this light. So for that, what we can do is either we can tweak this temperature, or we can add a texture in this light. So yeah, let's actually first try with the temperature, because that's always better. I think something like that looks pretty good already. I wasn't expecting it to be that easy. Yeah, well, that's just the magic of Octane. It makes things really extremely easy for you as an artist, because it handles all the hard work for you and you can just focus on your art. Let's decrease the power even more. Alright, so right now it's looking actually pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the power a little bit, and now what we can do is we can actually make it look much better with just one thing, and that is going to be adding bloom and adding that glow to those leaves and stuff like that, to the highlights basically. So what that's going to do is basically it's going to make it look much more realistic and much more dramatic, if you will. So for that, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Octane settings, and now here in these Octane settings, first of all, you need to make sure that all your settings are the same as mine. I'm just going to go over these. So max samples should be 1000. The higher these are, the more time it's going to take to render, and I think 1000 should be more than enough. Actually, something like 600 should be enough for this render. Yeah, so the GI clamp, this should be 1. This should really be the default of Octane, because it really anything higher than that doesn't really make it look realistic, and it gets rid of those fireflies and those issues which you face in Octane. So yeah, and apart from that, everything should be the same as mine, and it looks pretty good. So yeah, the ray epsilon should be this, the filter size should be this, the specular depth, the diffuse depth, and stuff like that. If you increase these specular depth and your diffuse depth, it's going to make it look more realistic. However, it's going to take much more render times, right? So that's definitely not something you want. So we're going to go to camera imager. This should be the same as mine. This is basically the default. So if you're not making any tweaks by yourself, you should be good to go. And in the post, now here we have to make the actual bloom. So you can see this bloom thing. So first of all, we're going to enable this. Now we can increase the bloom power. So I'm just going to crank it all the way up so you can see the difference. Let me just render this again. You can see it's absolutely it's looking so weird, and it looks so bad. So I'm just going to reduce this to a point where it looks good, and something like that seems to be the sweet spot. I'm going to reduce it even more actually. So if I zoom in on your tree trunk or the tree branches, so you're going to see that because of the displacement and because of the normal and because of the bump texture, it looks pretty good and it looks pretty realistic. Look at that. Looks amazing, doesn't it? So let's actually reposition this the way we want. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to minimize this for now. And now is the time when we create an Octane camera, and that's going to help us do the depth of field and stuff like that. And that's going to help us do the, what do you call it, the high focal length, and that's going to make the image look flatter and more dramatic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Octane library window. Actually, we did have it open here. Okay, so I'm just going to dock it again. Alright, I'm going to go to Octane objects and Octane camera, and now we have this camera. Now to view the world from this camera, what we need to do is we need to click this icon right here. So that's going to toggle us if we are inside the camera or not. So I'm just going to change this view, and you can see this is your camera. So right now we're not viewing the world from this camera, but if I press this, so now as you can see, if I press this, you can see it just toggles us inside the camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this Octane camera, and for the focal length I'm going to set it to telephoto. And the reason for that is basically if you set it to very low, it's going to show us a very wide angle view of this scene, which can look good if that's what you're going for. So if you can see something like this, should be really nice. Just a second. Something like that should look pretty dramatic and pretty good. If you have some grass and some mud in the ground, so that should look pretty good as well. But the look we're going for right now is a very shallow depth of field and a very tight shot. So for that I'm going to select telephoto, and you can see we have to unzoom quite a lot because it is quite zoomed in. So something like that should be good. And that is almost it. So yeah, and now let's go ahead and select and add our your depth of field. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this focal distance, and that's going to be your distance from the camera to the object which should be in focus. That's what your focal distance is. I'm going to undock this, and I'm going to increase its size. And what we can do, instead of actually specifying a hard-coded value and an actual value for the focal distance, we can actually just select an object. So just click this, and now we can select an object in our viewport. So select this and go ahead and click this. So why is it not working? I have no idea. Yeah, so once we've selected this, we're gonna go to your viewport and we're gonna click this, and now it's gonna set your focal distance accordingly. So after that is done, we're gonna go inside the Octane camera tag, and here we can actually set our focal distance and stuff like that. Sorry, focal depth and stuff like that, right? So if I go ahead and just a second, let me just zoom in for now. So that's going to be the frame of our first render, and it looks pretty good in my opinion. And so now let's just close it. We're going to go to Octane settings, and just once again make sure that all the settings are the same as mine. So I already explained the max samples and stuff like that. So we can go to settings, and all that is good. So now we go to actual render settings, and I can just turn these off because it doesn't really matter because I'm not using physical render. If you are, then obviously you should set it accordingly. So in the renderer, we're going to select Octane renderer, and all these settings should be the same. These are basically the default settings. So I'm just going to cross it out, and we can press this button when you are when you are ready to render. So I'm just going to press this, and now it's going to start rendering. And yeah, so our first render has started rendering, and it's going to be over in just a few minutes. So after that, what we're going to be doing is I'm just going to cross it out for now. I'm going to stop it actually. I'm just going to render both of them at once after this whole video is done. So the second render, what we're going to be doing is that's going to be a close-up, and the close-up is going to be something like that. So we're going to go to Octane Live Viewer window, and everything is back, and I'm going to start rendering. Let's wait for the viewport to update. You can see this amazing view. So what I will do is I'm actually looking for one good what do you call it, a good angle. Actually, something like that can be very good as well. So it's looking as if that's the sun, and these are some leaves and stuff like that. So that's going to be a very dramatic render too. But I mean, you can do it, of course, if you want. We're going to go in full close-up. I'm just going to wait for it to render. Actually, that close is not good because it's kind of looking unrealistic. Probably something like that should be good enough. Yeah, so that will be the frame of my second render. But obviously you can feel free to be creative with your renders. Actually, let's try to decrease our focal length. So let's make it super wide. Let's go for a slightly different style. Let's see how it looks. That's a little too unique. Yo, that actually looks pretty good. Yeah, so that is going to be my second render. That will be the frame of my second render, and I think this looks even better than the first one. So yeah, I mean, obviously you can feel free to be creative, and you can feel free to come up with your own your own render frame. So yeah, once you're ready, let's hit render again. And this was our first frame. It looks pretty basic if you ask me, and this is a more creative look. I'm just going to give it a second to start rendering. So yeah, this is the frame of our second render, and I honestly think it looks pretty good. So yeah guys, that was it for today, and please follow me on Skillshare and leave a review down below in this class if you liked it. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for today, and I'll see you guys in the next one.